This video was recorded on the Sapphire Pulse RX 570. A couple of days ago, I gained access to the Rocket Arena closed beta, and I was able to capture some footage of the game running on the Sapphire Pulse RX 570 at 1080p at both maximum and minimum settings. I have tagged which is which under the performance overlay for anyone that is interested, but please do keep in mind that this game is also still in closed beta, so the performance is subject to change. That said, as you will see, we had no issues running the game whatsoever, so I would assume that things are only going to get better. Rocket Arena is basically the first-person shooter equivalent of the Smash Bros. Series. The core of the combat revolves around wearing down your opponent before landing that one big hit that will send them flying outside of the arena. However, with the exception of one game mode, that's not really the main objective here, which is something that we will look at in a little bit more detail soon. Visually, the game has got that Pixar animation style aesthetic that not only looks very pretty but also runs pretty well on most hardware. The one issue that I did have with the visuals is that sometimes things can get a little bit too hectic, which makes it very difficult to see what's actually going on. Gunplay, or more accurately rocket play, does feel rather nice with good feedback in terms of visual and sound effects when landing hits. Movement, on the other hand, is a little bit more of a mixed bag. The default movement speed is quite slow and you don't have all that much air control while flying through the arena. Unfortunately, this can lead to the feeling of being juggled by enemy rockets with very little you can do to prevent it. Also, it feels like the hitboxes for either yourself or the rockets are pretty huge. I would often stop dodging as I had felt I had moved far enough away from a rocket only to receive the hit anyway. This is certainly not helped by the game's rather tight field of view. I mean, it's by no means a deal breaker, but it is still a little bit of a struggle. Each of the available characters in Rocket Arena have their own variation of a rocket launcher, and they also have a second ability and a special ability to go alongside that. For the most part, I found each of the characters to be unique enough to stand out and feel different, but I do still believe that they need a little bit more work in terms of balancing. But again, this is beta, so fingers crossed it will get a little bit better as the beta progresses. One of the interesting things that this game does is avoid the idea of killing and death. Instead, you have a Mega Blast meter, and as you take damage, it fills. Once the meter is full, one more big hit and you will be knocked out of the arena, so rather than fading to black and having to wait for a respawn, your character instead regains control and slowly glides back down to the battlefield. While this may seem like a very tiny inconsequential detail and it's not really going to have much of an effect on gameplay, it does mean that you have a game that manages to avoid death and thus is able to market itself to a much younger audience than most first-person shooters. To be clear, that is not the same as saying that this game is designed just for kids. However, making a game suitable for younger players does have a couple of negative side effects. For instance, there is currently no way to communicate with other players with no voice or text chat. Thankfully though, the developers have got a Discord server set up and running where people can look for other people to play with, so it shouldn't be too difficult to find people to play with on comms if you really want to. Rocket Arena is supposed to be launching as a free-to-play game, meaning that you can expect lots of cosmetics and the ability to pay in order to skip the grind. Personally, I've actually got nothing against this model, providing that the game does not suffer because of it. So fingers crossed that they avoid pay to win, and I really do hope that we don't go down the purely loot box route either. Now, while I don't know how much content the game will launch with, I have to admit that I was fairly happy with the amount of content we had access to during the beta. We had 5 maps, 6 characters and 3 game modes, and as far as I'm aware, all 3 game modes were available for each of the 5 maps, but I could be wrong, so don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's how it worked. The game modes available were Knockout, Mega Rocket and Rocket Ball, and each of these game modes is played as a 3 versus 3. In Knockout, each player starts with 3 badges, which is effectively 3 lives. Once all the players on a team lose all their badges, it's game over. What I really liked about this mode in particular is that even once you've lost all 3 of your badges, you are able to continue playing, and this adds a really cool dynamic where the players with 0 badges left can either push really hard onto their enemies as they have got nothing more to lose, or try their best to protect their teammates that still have badges remaining. It adds a really cool, interesting feel. The Mega Rocket game mode, on the other hand, is pretty much king of the hill, but the capture point can change location. The first team to capture 5 points, or the team with the highest number of captures after 10 minutes wins the match. Personally, this is the mode where I enjoyed myself the most because the capture points bring everyone together, which means you get an awful lot of action and it feels pretty constant. And then we have Rocket Ball. I really wanted to love this one, I just don't think I can because I don't think it works on these maps. The way the mode works is the ball spawns in the center of the map and you need to get it to the enemy's goal in order to score. You can do this either by running into the goal or throwing the ball into the goal. The problem is, all these maps are super open and most of the weapons have huge knockbacks, so defending from a well thrown ball can be super frustrating. Not only that, but due to the lack of communication between teammates, it's really difficult to set up a decent play. To be fair, it's not awful, and if you're playing with a group of friends on voice against a team that is doing the same, I bet it could be pretty intense and probably the best game mode in the entire game, but playing with randoms on these maps can be infuriating. As I mentioned earlier, we did play some of the games on maximum settings and we played some on the lowest, all at 1080p and on the Sapphire Pulse RX 570. With the game maxed out, we had zero issues holding a minimum of 60 frames per second and our average was around the 90 FPS mark. On the lower settings, we held a minimum of around 120 and an average well above 150. As you would likely expect when playing on the lower setting, our frame rate does become very variable, and as a result I would personally recommend that if you have got a 144Hz monitor with FreeSync, locking your FPS to around the 120 FPS mark for the nicest possible experience. In conclusion, I had a fair amount of fun with Rocket Arena. There's something about hitting people with mid-air rockets that really gets that blood pumping. I can imagine that this is the kind of game that I would not really play all the time, but instead keep installed for when I just fancy a few rounds of something different. Overall, the game is looking like a decent offering, and I recommend that you give it a go once you get a chance, because if it's going to be free to play, you've got nothing to lose at all. Finally, I would just like to say thank you so much for stopping by and watching till the end of the video. If you are new around here, I would really appreciate it if you would consider slapping that subscribe button and dinging that bell so you get notified of our future uploads. Also, if you are active over on Instagram, maybe you would be interested in following our account over there as well. It can be found at SapphireTech_official. Now, if you enjoyed or you found this video helpful, you can let us know by leaving us a like or alternatively a dislike. Either way, your feedback is welcomed. If you've got any questions or suggestions, please do leave them in the comment section below. Once again, thank you so much for watching. I have been Pixel, and until next time, I will catch you later. Bye bye.